Hi, this is Sarah from Abundance, Love, Joy, Intuitive Tarot. This is something different today. I've done a lot of soul searching and guided work over the last 6 or 8 months to really heal some of my inner childhood wounds and move towards self-love. And I got given a fairy tale. In fact, I downloaded 2 stories in one day that really did illuminate the relationship dynamics for me in a way that was very thought-provoking. So I'm going to read you this long fairy tale. It's very simply written. It's very simple wording, but and some of the storylining I wouldn't have done this way myself, but I faithfully recorded what I was given. And I think while this story is about 2 people learning to heal together, there are obviously I did all my healing work, what the healing work I've done so far I've done on my own, and that is absolutely valid too. But obviously there's no better way to identify your childhood wounds than to be triggered by somebody else, which is usually your closest relationships, be that family, be that romantic. So without further ado, this doesn't even have a title, this story, but it is, let's call it The Kingdom of Love. Once upon a time, there was a very handsome prince who was extremely popular with the ladies. Things would start off okay for a while, especially in the early days of courting, but problems arose when they tried to become closer. The prince had a reputation for being a bit gruff and aloof and holding some peculiar stipulations about relating. The only way he wanted to show his love was by buying pretty things for his lady and by standing back and admiring her, praising her to the skies and stroking her pretty face. And at first he would do this purely at arm's length. And because his arms were longer than hers, he could stroke her face, but she couldn't reach his face to stroke him. So it was very one-sided. After a time, most of his girlfriends would have enough and either leave him for a man they could get closer to, or they would dive in for a hug at an unexpected moment, thinking they were being loving. They were stunned when the prince reacted angrily. He ranted that his girlfriend was no longer suitable, for he suddenly found her nose too long and her teeth too annoyingly perfect, and he banished her. Despite this happening a lot, there was no shortage of maidens who would tolerate this treatment, just in case it turned into a serious relationship. But it never did. Until one day, the prince clapped eyes on the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She created intricate tapestries of great beauty, and animals and children flocked to her. The prince was smitten. Throwing caution to the wind, he allowed this woman closer than arm's length, almost to elbow length at this time. They could hug each other's arms and touch each other's faces, but the prince was still very guarded and would only let her caress the right-hand side of his body. It was weird, but she went with it. They fell deeper in love, and one day the prince, swept up in his emotions, pulled her into a tight embrace. It was wonderful for a few seconds, but then he leapt back in excruciating pain, a pain so bad he thought he might die. The woman was very understanding, but now the prince regressed to stroking her face from a safe distance, and this made the woman feel rejected. Hurt and angry, she departed, leaving the prince bereft and resigning himself to a life alone. Never again would he let anyone get close to him. Many, many years passed, and the prince became a king. He was happy alone, calling all the shots and living life on his terms, experiencing no pain. Until one day, when he hosted a princess visiting from a neighbouring kingdom, he was smitten, as was she. He stroked her face, held her shoulders, and told her how beautiful she was. They were happy. He was surprised that, unlike all the others, the princess was able to give him the space he needed to feel secure. Paradoxically, this made him want to draw her closer. But how could he explain to her that he couldn't let her closer, even though he desperately wanted to, and that he would hurt her, even though he didn't mean to? and that she would ultimately leave him and they would both wind up unhappy. One day when the princess looked at him with her kindly eyes, he did confess all this, declaring himself to be completely unlovable, attracting the wrong women who seemed to only want to hurt him. He told her he was a toxic weirdo and she should stay away. In fact, he exclaimed that he loved her too much for any of his pain and insisted on banishing her for her own sake. But the princess did not leave. She stood her ground. Instead, she said the most surprising thing. My darling king, you are not a toxic weirdo, incapable of loving or being loved. In fact, you are behaving in an utterly sane and rational way, exactly as any other sane person would do in your shoes. The king was puzzled. How on earth could she say that? The princess explained that when the king was just a tiny prince, some well-meaning but hapless people accidentally cast some spells on him. These spells embedded invisible daggers in his back. They've been there so long that he's never known life without these daggers. They feel normal to him. She leads him to a mirror to show him, and there they are as plain as day. She explains that once they've been identified, they're visible to him, and now also to anyone he chooses to show them to. The king blinks in surprise as he takes this all in, realizing that whenever anyone got close enough to hug him, they were accidentally hurting him, and he would flinch and turn away. He realized that protecting these wounds was the source of all his past behaviors. He felt a deep regret for all the past hurt he had caused to the numerous women, while also forgiving himself. What the princess said was true. He had only been protecting himself, in quite a clumsy way perhaps, but the only way he knew how. He asked the princess how she knew about his invisible daggers. Pointing to her shoulders and arms and face, she revealed her own daggers, right in the places he used to caress her. The king falls to his knees, sobbing at the pain he must have unknowingly caused her. Why did you put up with it? Because eventually you're so hungry for love, you'll tolerate some pain just to get that love, for as long as you can stand it. The king was blown away. Then he danced around in excitement. Well, now that we know about these daggers, we can help each other remove them. Then we can hug and kiss and be as close as we want to, just like all of the other people in the kingdom, even the peasants. But the princess looked at him with trepidation and sadness. She explained that you can't just yank these daggers out. Each one has a different magic spell to unlock it. And worse, each person's spells are unique to them. So it is a quest, one that involves a lot of soul searching. Then, when a dagger is unlocked by the spell, it can still be very painful to remove from the body. It needs to be done with great care. While many loving couples have the emotional intelligence and solid grounding required to help each other, many people turn to an experienced shaman counselor to assist with the journey of healing. As even though each spell and each dagger is different, there are commonalities, and a shaman has seen almost all of them. The king was thoughtful, nodding. He did not like the idea of talking to a shaman, but he did not want to admit this. The princess went on to explain that it was worse. Each dagger had slowly been dripping poison into their bodies. So just learning the right incantation to unlock the dagger and removing it was not enough. The poison had to be released or it would continue to cause problems. And the only way to get this toxin out was through the tears of catharsis. The king was aghast. Only pathetic peasants and subjects cried, and the thought of crying in front of the princess was almost intolerable. And yet, he shocked himself by realizing he might be willing to try. Maybe not today, but soon. The princess, filled with love for the king, was very understanding. Then she explained that there was one final dagger she had not told him about. Drawing back his ermine cloak, she exposed his chest to reveal a large dagger right through his heart. Then she revealed the one in her heart too. She explained that whenever any of the other daggers was tweaked, it would make the dagger in their hearts grow even bigger. That's why it was vital to work with a shaman to ensure that they did no further damage while trying to remove each other's daggers. The king was deathly alarmed to realise this large dagger in his heart was the main reason he needed to keep everyone at arm's length, and why he was so desperate to stop anyone accidentally bumping one of the daggers in his back, adding more poison and increasing the size of the dagger through his heart. He couldn't bear the idea of anyone, least of all him, hurting his beloved princess either, and causing the dagger in her heart to grow bigger. Then he had a terrible realisation. A past memory resurfaced. He had tried to talk about one of his wounds with a previous girlfriend. She had seemed understanding and even sympathetic, but during the next fight, she used his vulnerability against him, literally twisting that knife. The resulting pain in his heart only made him more guarded in his next relationship. He wept as he shared the story with the princess. She looked him deep in the eyes and vowed that she would never use his vulnerabilities against him. In fact, she would draw her sword on any who might dare to try and hurt her beloved king in this way. The king wept harder as he replied, "I believe you and I trust you." Then there was an almighty clang as one of the daggers in his back clattered to the floor and disappeared. The dagger in his heart grew slightly smaller. The princess tenderly massaged the spot on his back where the dagger had been, and the king cried and cried as he remembered back to his childhood when he was let down by the people he had trusted to care for him, nurture him, and love him. When he was hurting and they told him just to get over it. That betrayal erupted all over again, and the king cried and cried and cried some more, and he didn't care who saw him. The king was surprised at how calm he felt once the tears abated. He felt cleansed and light and free. Suddenly there was great relief and joy where once there had been pain. He started to feel that there was now even more love between himself and the princess than there had been before. How was that even possible? Overwhelmed with emotion, the king said to the princess, "My beloved princess, you mean the world to me, and I swear I will never forsake you and I will never abandon you." The princess looked at the king with tears in her eyes and said, "I believe you and I trust you." And with that, one of the daggers jumped out of her shoulder and clanged to the ground before vanishing, and the dagger in her heart shrank in size. She cried and cried as she remembered feeling alone and abandoned as a child. She cried more and more as she remembered all of the past people and boyfriends who had let her down. The king tenderly massaged the sore spot where that dagger had been and kissed her shoulder. He carefully held her till her tears abated, and then she felt cleansed of the poison. Let's call this shaman. The end. As I say, there's a lot in this. It's very simply written, and I do like the idea that you can actually heal yourself, especially with a therapist. You don't need a partner to do this. I've certainly gone through almost all of my daggers. I'm sure there are plenty more on my own, and you can do it. Journaling really helps because that is the reflection that allows you to sort of unlock experiences that you might have even forgotten about. Or when you touch on an old memory, you realise you've twanged one of your daggers, and boy, it comes out. And getting it out is the thing. Crying is so cathartic. Writing it out really makes it lose its grip on you. If you're looking into a scientific approach to this, I'll recommend the Huberman Lab podcast. That is fantastic, and this is December 2023. They've just put out a protocol about how 15 minutes of intense journaling about a very sad experience in your life, just once a week for 4 weeks, has enormous healing properties. And you don't have to show anyone the writing. You just write continuously for 15 minutes about something bad that happened to you, and you write and write and write, and you just repeat that exercise once a week. The full protocol's on the Huberman Lab, and I will post a link to that. because even if you don't, if you're not a spiritual person, even if you don't have a therapist, it sounds like a great exercise with, scientific backing to show the health benefits and the emotional benefits that are measurable scientifically. Another resource I'd like to point you towards is the holistic psychologist, Dr. Nicole LaPera. Now, she has an incredible free Instagram account filled with absolute gold tools on how to set boundaries, tools on attachment styles, tools on how to navigate difficult relationships, it's all about self-healing. Honestly, she's got another book out too, Be the Love You Seek, I think it's called. If I got that wrong, I'll put it in the captions. How to Be the Love You Seek. But she is an absolute legend, and I think she's done so much to help people heal themselves and to look at their relationships in a more healing light. Because everybody has daggers, everybody has poison. You don't know until you've been triggered what those things are, and they really do. You walk around with a shield around you that you don't even realize is there. That is a real handbrake on relating sincerely, openly, and honestly to people. So look, I hope that helps. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Again, it's a very simple fairy tale, very simply written. I wrote it down as it was given to me, and I think there's a lot of profound wisdom in the simplicity. So look, I hope this helps you. This is Sarah from Abundance, Love, Joy, wishing you nothing but abundance, love, and joy.